I began my investigation by discovering what was in that building. A quick online search helped me find a directory. Most of the building had small offices for lawyers, accountants, and similar jobs. There was a regional office for a car rental company and a medical consulting business. I came across a few unclear company listings that I needed to research, but the one that really caught my eye was the South Korean embassy. It was on the 4th floor, and it seemed like the only place in the building that could be of interest to attackers. Sure, New York was the bigger target, but it felt too strange that the bomb was located in the same building as an embassy. I set up my watch at 57th and Park Avenue. The attackers showed up at 3:15 in the morning. They were in a few big trucks used for building things. The people pretending to be janitors were now dressed like police officers. I wasn't sure if their uniforms were real or not. They got out of the trucks and helped to move cars away from the area while the others set up big barriers. I counted 11 of them. I returned several nights to watch from different places. There were also 3 hostages. The bad guys had brought them along when they came. The captives had cloth bags over their heads. They were quickly led into the building from the back of one of the trucks after the area was made clear. The pretend police went inside the building and came back out 5 minutes later, dressed as maintenance workers. Interestingly, 2 of the attackers did not go into the building. Instead, they walked across the street and entered the tall building nearby. One person was holding a guitar case. That must be the person who shot me. At the start of the time loop, I wished I could find out what my wife was up to. Now things had changed. I needed better tools, and I had the cash to get them. Across the street from the embassy was a tall office building. I got a fake janitor outfit from a uniform store. When the real maintenance team arrived at midnight, I was ready with a bag filled with envelopes, each holding $5,000. I took a rolling trash can from the back of my rented van and joined the cleaning crew. This crew wasn't working in any offices on the north side of the 4th floor. The nearest I could get to was a real estate developer on the 6th floor. I waited for them to finish cleaning, then I handed each of them 2 more envelopes. "Lock the door when you leave and try to forget you saw me," I said. When I was by myself, I looked out a window toward the embassy and took my gear from the trash can. The first thing I grabbed was a strong glass cutter. I made a 2-foot hole in the window and set the cutter, with glass still on it, to the side. Then I pulled out a special microphone. This was a special model designed for police use and not sold to the public. Fortunately, the company had offices in New York. I went there with a lot of money in a briefcase and found a worker who agreed to help me get one under the table. Just so you know, I paid way too much for everything. I knew I didn't have to spend that much money, but I thought, why not? The special microphone could catch everything the 2 men on the street said, along with the tough guy in the lobby. The lights were on in the 4th floor room, but the curtains were closed. I pointed the microphone at the windows and could hear some quiet talking. Overall, the microphone helped me listen to 5 of the terrorists. Useful, but still lacking. I found myself in the tall building again, pretending to be a maintenance worker. I had left my fancy equipment behind and brought my gun instead. I needed to find the sniper team. First, I headed to the roof. It was quiet and empty. I leaned over the safety railing and looked down. The building was nearly 50 stories tall. That's probably why they weren't up there. The height made it hard to see straight down to the street. I leaned out and peeked over the edge of the building. I noticed something move quickly, like a gun appearing for a moment and then disappearing again. It looked to be above the top of the embassy building, maybe on the 9th or 10th floor. After I took the elevator to the 12th floor, I used the stairs to look from the 11th floor down. I was on the 9th floor, walking toward the door of a marketing firm when I heard a noise behind me. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my back. It was clear that the person with the sniper rifle was there to stop people like me from getting too close. I didn't know where he had come from, but now that I knew he was there, it wasn't hard to spot him. The lookout was in an office with a good view of the elevators and the stairwell. I couldn't catch him by surprise. It took me 3 tries to find a way to him. I stepped out of the stairwell and quickly turned right. I walked down a hallway where he couldn't see me. I found a small space behind a coffee machine and waited quietly. He walked down the hallway, checking each office as he passed. He should have looked behind the coffee machine. When he was close to me, I stepped out and pressed my gun against his back. Thump. Thump his body blocked the sound of the shots, but I didn't know if he had called for help when he saw me. I might not have long. I quickly checked him. He had no ID. His pockets were empty except for some bullets, a knife, and a spare gun. What I really wanted was his radio. He had an earpiece and a small microphone clipped to the collar of his shirt. Wires connected both devices to a small speaker attached to his belt. I noticed a label that read Ultralux, but there were no buttons or screens to show what frequency they were using. I could hear a faint sound from the tiny earpiece. Someone was trying to contact the lookout. I figured he had reported my presence. Flash. The next morning I searched for Ultralux radios online. They were fancy, secure, two-way radios. I found a seller in Queens and asked him to explain how they worked. The back cover came off, showing a screen that showed numbers with arrows pointing up and down. There were also 10 knobs to change the settings. I went back to the tall building. To give myself more time, I planned a new way to surprise the lookout. Last time, I only had 5 minutes to check him before his friends triggered the device. He must have called me in because he was very suspicious. When he didn't answer them, it was clear something was wrong. I knew where the sniper team would be, so I got there first, found a place to hide, and waited. This plan worked much better. I had a good 15 minutes to quickly memorize the code on the spotter's radio before the sniper started looking for him. They had just gotten settled in this building. I don't think the sniper even thought they could be in danger. He walked into the office where his partner was watching for trouble, his gun still in its case. Jorge, where are you? You're not answering! He stopped suddenly when he saw Jorge lying on the floor and my gun aimed at him. I fired 2 shots at his chest. Now we're even, buddy. That's what you get for trying to kill me. Now 2 of the bad guys were out of the way. I didn't have much time left. I focused hard on remembering the code. It had 10 numbers from 0 to 20. I kept saying the numbers to myself. 09, 12, 18, 03, 05, 11, 19, 14, 02, 17. I got out of bed and typed the code into my phone's note app. With this, I could listen to what the terrorists were saying. For the next 2 weeks, I focused on listening and creating a timeline of their activities. I watched everything the 11 troublemakers did and listened to their talks. This helped me understand the whole situation clearly. I might not want to say this, but when I first found out that New York was being attacked, I thought I would be dealing with Arabs. I know that sounds biased, but that's how I felt. But really, that's where the best chance was. When I learned that the target was the South Korean embassy, it made things more complicated. The terrorists I saw didn't fit the usual profile. Most of them were Hispanic with a few white men and 1 black man. They didn't look like the typical extremists. They seemed too mixed together to be part of a strict group. It turned out there were 2 types of people involved, those who wanted to cause harm and those who were in it for money. There were 7 of them, including everyone I had noticed so far, and they were all soldiers for hire. They didn't know about the bomb. They thought they were just hired help in a fight between North and South Korea. The plan, as they understood it, was to take the South Korean ambassador and his family. They would take the hostages to the embassy because it was an important place, and they would watch over them while the North Koreans did what they needed to do. Here is how they were arranged. The sniper and his assistant were hired soldiers. So were the 2 people keeping watch outside the building, the guard in the lobby, and 2 others on the 4th floor. In the North Korean group, 1 person was overseeing things from the security office near the lobby, while 3 others were in the ambassador's office on the 4th floor. The mercenaries knew that the North Koreans had a bomb, but they didn't realize it was a nuclear one. They thought they would get paid for their work, not face death. The North Koreans brought in several big metal cases filled with gear. They told the mercenaries that it was film equipment, but they also had a bomb strong enough to destroy the entire building. They would record themselves attacking the ambassador and his family, then move back to a safe spot to blow up the building, which stood for South Korea's alliance with America. All of that was true, except for how it ended. The 4 North Koreans understood that this was a one-way journey. Their goal was clear. They wanted to hit back at the United States and their South Korean allies. The explosion had to happen. Everything else was less important. They would explode if they sensed anything was off. Sirens, boom. Sounds of a fight, boom. No response on the radio for too long, boom. If I didn't step in, the attackers would spend more than an hour hurting the ambassador and his family. They would shout wildly into the cameras they had set up. Then they planned to blow themselves up along with the city. They were making a video of themselves, but they weren't sharing it with anyone. The camera was recording, but they didn't send the video out. They were afraid the NSA might see anything they shared over the internet. I'm not sure how possible that is, but they didn't want to take the chance of an airstrike if the government found out what they were doing. Instead, their plan was to send the video to their friends right before they used the bomb. They wanted to act so fast that no one could stop them. After that, their allies would tell the world their story and claim responsibility for what happened. As for the terrorists' friends, they said they were a group of North Korean supporters, completely separate from the government. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Every other line in their speeches was about how great their leader was. In my view, they were just trying to confuse everyone. It was hard to see how any group from the poor country of North Korea could ever get a nuclear bomb. But that wasn't my main issue. I just had to handle these annoying people. My biggest worry was the terrorists being too quick to shoot. Any long attack would trigger the bomb. 3 North Koreans and the hostages were in the ambassador's office. I thought about hiding where I could surprise them, avoiding their guards. But there was still the 4th North Korean in the security office on the ground floor. He could set off the bomb from there, especially if he couldn't reach his friends. I realized that stopping the bomb was not an option. I'm not a hero like MacGyver. Even if the bomb didn't explode, I didn't want to be stuck around bad guys. My main job was to stop the nuclear bomb, but I had a few personal reasons too. First, I needed to stay alive. If stopping the bomb broke the time loop, any wounds I got would still be there on Saturday. It would be really bad if I got killed just when I was about to escape. If I were to get hurt, then let them go ahead and try again. Next, I would do my best to avoid hurting anyone else. If an innocent person, like the ambassador's daughter, got caught in the attack, then let it happen, and try again. Lastly, I want to come out of this looking good. If it all worked out, I would be famous. Like that pilot Sully who safely landed a plane in the river, but even more. People would want to celebrate me everywhere. I would never have to buy food again. But I would also face a lot of questions about what happened before the hopefully failed bomb attempt. I had to think ahead to avoid uncomfortable conversations. For example, if I hid in the building, how would I explain that later? Saying I visited the embassy and took a nap in a closet? That wouldn't sound right. I realized I would need some help. If I had enough time, I could figure out how to handle it all by myself. It could take a long time, and that seemed unnecessary. Why go through all of this alone if I didn't have to? Just having one helper would make everything much easier. The first person I asked for help was Sung. Sung was from South Korea, and I thought of him as my best friend. He was an easy choice for this task, and I noticed the strange twist of fate in picking him. His experiences made him a great person to work with for what I wanted to do. Sung had been a soldier for a little while before he lost an eye in battle and had to leave the military. No, he wasn't a special soldier. He even told me that he wasn't a great shooter even before he lost his eye. He was really good at fighting without weapons, but that's not very useful in today's army. After he left the service, Sung became an interpreter. One thing we both had in common was our talent for languages. He spoke many languages from the East very well. He had spent most of his time working for South Korean tech companies. He helped them talk with their partners from China and Japan. In Sung's dojo, there was someone really tough, his sister Misuk. Misuk was the reason why she and her brother moved to New York. Back in South Korea, she had been something like a special soldier. I wasn't sure if she had been in the military or a spy. She never mentioned it. She had worked with American forces during a training mission. She never shared much information and said it was a secret. All she would say was that both our countries mistreated her, and she had to leave South Korea with her brother to stay safe from the North. During my time in the loop, I talked to Sung many times. I convinced him that I was experiencing a time loop, and this helped him share more about his and his sister's past. But that wasn't the main reason I told him about the loop. I just needed to talk to someone every now and then. I think he probably felt sorry for me when I told him I saw him as my best friend. I had never shared my secret with Misuk before, but now I decided to. She would be a big help in stopping the bad guys. That made us a team of 3, but I wanted to add one more person, my wife. I wasn't so sure about that choice. Julie didn't really have any special skills that would be useful for taking on dangerous people. She couldn't fight and had never fired a gun. She wasn't very good with technology, but my wife had one important quality for this challenge. I could trust her. Hold on. I know what you're thinking. Trust her? Seriously? This is the woman who hurt me. She had secrets I didn't know about. She made me look bad. But, while I could never again trust her with my heart, I could definitely trust her with my life. She cared for me in her own complicated way. I was certain of that. She would follow instructions, keep an eye on me, and most importantly, I thought she would believe in me. The biggest risk in this whole plan was if one of my helpers didn't do what we agreed on. What if I got hurt? What if the people with me had a chance to stop the bomb? I would be in serious trouble if they managed to prevent the explosion while I was lying there unable to help. If things went wrong, I needed that bomb to go off to start everything over again. Even Sung and Misuk could only be trusted to a point. I needed to be cautious not to put them in a situation where they could harm me. It's one thing to feel like I'm trapped in a time loop. It's different to allow themselves and the whole city of New York to be destroyed in a nuclear disaster because of my choices. They would probably let me go if it meant saving the city. I couldn't be mad at them for that. They were just doing what they thought was best. I had all the chances I needed to make things work, and I couldn't let someone else mess it up for me. I was confident that I could count on my wife, Julie. If there was anyone in the world who cared for me and believed in me completely, it was her. Maybe my parents. But they were in Florida, so Julie joined my team as the fourth member. We tried more than 20 times to stop the bad guys. That might sound like not many wins, but we could have stopped the bomb in the first few tries. I was quick to call it off if anyone got hurt. As I thought, Sung and Misuk were not ready to give up easily. I needed to create a distraction and let the terrorists' quick reactions handle it. I viewed all those early tries as chances to learn, watching how the mercenaries and North Koreans responded to my different ideas. What would push them to act? That was the main question. It required some experimenting to find out. I became more sure than ever that if I called for help, they would just send in planes to drop bombs on the building. The government understands that a direct attack could be very risky. They would never take that risk. One thing I realized from our failed attempts was how much Julie really cared about me. During our fourth try, Julie had just one job: quietly get close to one terrorist and stop him. She couldn't use a gun, but she had a tire iron and the chance to catch him off guard. The issue was that Julie wasn't someone who liked to fight. She understood how serious things were and wanted to help, but she found it really hard to approach a stranger and hurt him. I had to tell her again and again, "You need to hit him as hard as you can," because if I didn't stress it, she wouldn't take it seriously. On our fourth attempt, she didn't hit him hard enough. I entered the room just as he was getting up behind her. He already had his gun in hand. At that moment, I had grabbed one of the mercenaries' guns and he was aiming straight at me. Julie noticed my wide eyes and quickly understood the danger. She jumped in front of me, covering me just as the attacker shot. I felt her body tense against me when the bullets struck. I raised my gun and shot around her. I fired every bullet I had into him. I held Julie close in my arms. "Why did you do that?" "I told you nothing can really hurt me." Julie just smiled, her teeth stained from blood. I needed to take a day off to think about that. She had taken a bullet for me. You might say, so what? She knew about the time loop, so it seemed pointless. But it wasn't. It's one thing to hear about the loop and think you understand it. It's different to risk your own life believing in it. Julie didn't experience this reality every day. Every time I told her, it felt like a brand new idea to her. No matter how strong my proof was, she always seemed to wonder if I was just imagining things or trying to pull off some big joke. On top of that, I still didn't really understand how the loop worked. Did everything stop for everyone else while I went through the same day again? Or did life keep going for them while I stayed still? There were too many questions for me to put anyone else in danger. But Julie did. She either had complete trust in me or was ready to give everything for me. I could feel her love, but her choice eased some of the anger I didn't even know I had. I wasn't sure what would happen for us when the loop was over, but it made me reconsider some of my ideas. Even though I tried to forget about Julie, I always knew that when the time came, I would take a tough approach to things. It might be too late for us to fix our marriage, but maybe we could avoid adding more anger. I needed to think about that more. Here's what took place on the 27th time. Friday, July 15th, 2016, day 16:05. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. I got out of bed and headed right to the main bedroom. I gently shook Julie to wake her up. Huh? What time is it? Is everything okay? She said, rubbing her sleepy eyes. You need to get up and take a shower. Then put on something light and comfy. I'll be waiting for you downstairs when you're ready. Sam, what's happening? I carefully helped her sit up. I'll tell you while we eat. We have a lot to do today. Just trust me. That made her pause for a moment. She seemed unsure, but nodded. Okay, fine. You want me to get up? I'll get up. Just be ready to talk when I come downstairs, okay? I had my own shower and put on some comfy pants and a t-shirt. We had some errands to run today. I got to the kitchen before Julie by about 15 minutes, so I began making breakfast. When she came in, I was taking the bacon off the stove and getting ready to cook the eggs. Aw, shucks, I was going to use that bacon for dinner tonight, she said. I know, but we're going to New York tonight. Wait, how do you know that? Julie asked, looking puzzled. Never mind. When did we decide to go to New York tonight? Is this some last-minute work thing? No. This will be easier if I show you something first, I said. I waved for Julie to come with me as I left the kitchen. I picked a few oranges from the fruit bowl. We walked into the den, and I gave her the TV remote. I turned around so my back was to the TV and started juggling the oranges. Julie looked at me like I was strange. When did you learn to juggle? I've had a lot of free time lately, I answered with a smile. I can also do some card tricks. We'll get to that soon. Right now, I need you to turn on the TV. Okay, now press mute. I paused while she did it. Now, without turning the sound back on, change the channel to whatever you want. Julie smiled, as if we were having fun together. All right, she said. What's next? You landed on the Home Shopping Network. They are showing bright turquoise jewelry for older ladies. Julie's smile faded a bit, partly because she likes turquoise, and partly because she was curious about how I knew that. She glanced from me to the TV behind me, then back at me to check if I had a mirror or something sneaky set up. Okay, I'll close my eyes. Change the channel. Now it's on ESPN. You tried to trick me into picking a channel you never watch. I opened my eyes. Now turn up the sound. When Julie turned the TV's volume back on, I paused for a moment to hear what was happening in the game. Then I started talking with the sportscasters. I had about 20 minutes of it in my head so I could match it perfectly. It felt like I was talking in two voices at once, all while keeping the oranges in the air. At last, I dropped the oranges, walked over to Julie, took the remote from her relaxed hand, and turned off the TV. What just happened? She asked, a bit nervous. That was really strange, Sam. How did you do that? You always choose the same channels, I replied. It gets really simple after you try it 20 or 30 times. Julie's lips were moving, but nothing was coming out. I took her back to the kitchen and sat her down at the table. I've been living the same day over and over today for more than 4 years. I'm not sure of the exact time because I've lost track a bit. Each day I wake up in the guest room and it's July 15th, 2016. She had questions, of course, but most of them I still couldn't answer. I had many ideas about how the time loop worked, and one big thought about how to end it. But I put those thoughts aside for now. We had to deal with the big problem in front of us first. It took about 20 minutes for Julie to start to feel anxious. She is a clever woman, even cleverer than me. It was starting to dawn on her that I had lived this day over 1,000 times. She also remembered what she planned to do at noon today. But did I know what it was? How could I miss my chance with her so many times? Also, I wasn't really myself. I was not the caring husband she recognized yesterday. I wasn't saying sweet things or being close to her. We had talked about this before, but it still surprised me that she was the one to mention it. Maybe she could see that I understood. So, Sam, if you've lived this day so many times, you might have seen me doing something I wish I hadn't. Before I could respond, she started crying. I had thought about whether I should keep Julie unaware. I could have waited until Saturday to confront her about being unfaithful. If I had chosen to pretend, she might have believed I didn't know what was going on. But I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to pretend everything was fine. Let's be honest, and if tomorrow comes, we'll start fresh. We talked a lot about our marriage and what it could be. This was always hard for her. Julie, we can't sit here and go over this today. I know it's tough for you, but we've talked about it many times. Just so you know, I've read your diary. She gasped. Hold on, please don't worry. Yes, it was difficult, but you might be the luckiest person in the world of unfaithful partners. I've had more than 4 years to deal with my feelings about it. You won't feel the hurt and sadness that I went through. You won't even recall all the little things I did to get back at you. What if I also lost my chance to win you back? She said, wiping her eyes. What if I never get the chance to mend my marriage? All I can say is that you should go back and read your old journals. Whatever our relationship becomes by Saturday, you can feel lucky that fate brought us together. If I hadn't been stuck in this strange loop, I might have stayed away from you after what happened. I wanted to give her a bit of hope. At least hope that I wouldn't just cut her out of my life completely. I have a reason for sharing all of this with you today. I still don't understand the time loop much, but I think I may have found a way to end it. Julie took a deep breath and got ready. I think she realized that the best choice was to stay near me and try to win back my trust. When I talked to her and made plans with her, it showed that things were getting better. She tried hard not to focus on her worries about our marriage. How can you stop it? She asked, drying her tears. Tonight, or really early tomorrow morning, a nuclear bomb is going to explode in Manhattan. Oh my gosh! For a moment, all our marriage problems vanished. Are you sure? Of course you're sure. How do you know? Why is this happening? I'll explain everything as the day goes on. It took me a long time to figure out what was going on. My day starts over when the bomb goes off. It all happened quickly, and I didn't understand it at first. But now, I figured out where it's happening and made a plan. We've tried to stop it several times already. We have? Oh, right. Wow. So that's what we're doing tonight? Stopping a huge explosion? Julie let out a small, nervous laugh. This was quite a lot to deal with right after waking up. I wasn't sure I would have handled it as well. We had a timeline to stick to, so I urged her to hurry. We both needed to cancel our jobs for the night. Julie struggled with what to say to her boss. She already knows about your secrets. Just tell her you were found out and need to spend the day with your husband. Julie's eyes filled with tears at that, but it fit with her rule of being honest, so that's what she chose to do. I told my boss Ben the same thing, but that I would be in for about an hour to finish some work. Julie and I both took the train into New York. We went to Broadwell and Mark's, where she stayed in the lobby while I went up to handle my trades before the market opened. Now that I had a real chance to change things for the better, I wanted to make sure I got the money flowing. I also needed it for some plans I had for the day. After that, we went to Sung's dojo, where I did something like what I did for Julie. This time, instead of fixing the television, I worked on the radio. Sung always had music playing in the dojo. I asked him to choose a channel, and I would chat along with it. Sung thought he had a clever trick because he used an internet service to play a Korean talk radio station. When he turned on the station in the gym, he was surprised to find out that I spoke Korean, and even more amazed that I was talking at the same time as the radio hosts. I made sure his sister Misuk was there to see it, even though she agreed to join with a bit of annoyance. She was still her usual grumpy self after that, but I had her attention. You don't know me, but I know you. I've been coming to this dojo for a long time. If things were different, we could be friends. Maybe we will have that chance someday. But right now, I need both of you for something important. Sung looked interested. Misuk looked annoyed. How can I help? Sung asked, while Misuk said, I'm not joining in on this American's nonsense. I need both of your talents. Sung, I know you were a soldier and helped with translations. I will need your language skills. Misuk, I understand you were in the 9th Special Forces Brigade of South Korea. Her eyes went wide with surprise. She looked ready to confront me, which I wanted to avoid because I knew she could easily overpower me, no matter how much I had trained. We've had many conversations, I said, trying to keep things calm. That was a lie. I know you don't remember, but if we could talk all day, you might tell me more. Big lie. I don't think Misuk believed me, but it did calm her down a little as she thought about it. Honestly, most of what I knew about her came from her brother. Before we began working together to stop the bad guys, she usually only spoke a few sentences to me each day. I knew I had to speak quickly before she lost her cool. North Korean terrorists plan to blow up a bomb in New York tonight. That caught their attention. Mi-suk disliked polite chats, but she hated North Korea even more. Sung, on the other hand, didn't seem to feel much anger towards the North, despite growing up in a split nation. But Mi-suk couldn't stand it. She really wanted to find out more. It looked like she might get tough with me if I didn't share what I knew. I had to watch what I said around Sung and his sister, especially her. They might have accepted the idea of the time loop, but they wouldn't count on me to take charge if they heard everything. The first time I tried to include them, I messed up by saying the bomb was nuclear. The only reason Mi-suk let me leave the dojo was that she didn't know I could defend myself. When she tried to grab me, I caught her off guard with a move and quickly escaped out the door and into the street. I think I would have been in big trouble for the rest of the day if I hadn't told her what she was really asking for. On the way there, I had told Julie not to say anything about the explosion being nuclear. I had to make the terrorist attack seem less serious. If I didn't, Sung and Mi-suk would insist we tell the right people. They pushed for it, but I managed to convince them to support me instead. Once she accepted this plan, Mi-suk was very excited to help stop a North Korean terrorist plot, even though I made her think it was just a minor issue. As the important time got closer, I shared more details. They would see that this was a much bigger situation than I first explained, but by that point it would be too late to ask anyone else for help. I told them to keep their evening free and be ready by 7 p.m. We would come to get them after dinner. After that, we went to grab a bite to eat. I needed to pass the time while my money grew. I began to tell Julie what she needed to do for tonight. I also reminded her to be careful about what she said in front of Sung and his sister. After lunch, we went to a fancy car rental place, where you can rent cars that most people can't buy. I spent a little time looking at the Ferraris and Lamborghinis with the salesman. What I really want is a car that feels nice and looks very expensive, I said. Do you have any regular-sized cars, not a limo, but something close? As I expected, he took me to another garage. Inside were 3 Maybach cars lined up, one in maroon, one in silver, and one in black. The salesman began to walk me over to the silver car, but I stopped him. I want the black one. It's just what I need. Sir, that car has some unique features. It's not really... That's the one I want. It's the best choice. I really like that black car. His face looked a mix of upset and frustrated. Sir, that car costs $18,000 to rent each day. Maybe you'd prefer the... This is the one I want, I said, taking out my credit card. The salesman didn't seem happy until the bank approved the payment. What he really wanted to say was that this Maybach was a special armored car. I already knew that, but I wanted him to be able to say he hadn't mentioned it, just in case anyone wondered why I was driving a small tank tonight. The tank came with a fancy radio system in front. Most of the people who rented it had security teams that needed to stay in touch. My plan was to say that my wife and I were having some trouble in our marriage and wanted to enjoy a special night out, spending as much as we needed. We would spend the day visiting different places, showing ourselves around until we met our friends, Sung and Mi-suk. Later, we happened to find the terrorists by chance when we overheard a radio message while driving in our rented car. It was a weak plan. It would need some changes to make it seem even a little believable. Sadly, I couldn't think of a better idea. We needed a reason for why we went in ourselves instead of waiting for the police. We would say that we heard noises that sounded like trouble and that we were nearby in our fancy rental car. As we listened, we understood how serious the situation was, and we decided to face 11 armed terrorists, like any good person would do. Sure, that sounds great. I was hoping for a lot of thankfulness for what we did and not too many questions about why or how we managed it. The only reason I could offer was that Mi-suk was a Special Forces soldier. Sung was a former soldier, and I would say I was their best student. I just needed them to agree with me on that. Julie was with me because she is my wife, and we weren't expecting any trouble. We drove around New York in the fancy Maybach, stopping at all the famous spots: Broadway, Times Square, Central Park. We had dinner at a nice Italian restaurant and then went to pick up our friends Sung and Mi-suk. On the way, we made a quick stop to talk to a delivery man. I gave him some money to let me change the food he was bringing. I wore a big hoodie so he wouldn't recognize me. I needed to show him what I was adding to the food so he wouldn't think I was trying to harm anyone. For $2,000, he stopped questioning me. We kept driving around Manhattan without a clear direction. I had two reasons for this. I wanted to put some distance on the Maybach so I could explain why I rented it, and I needed to review our plans with the whole team. Sung knew what he had to do in our plan, and he understood why it was important. Mi-suk was a little tougher to convince. I should lead the main plan, I said. You're not trained for this kind of thing. Really, none of us should be doing it. We need to call the police. We've talked about that, Mi-suk. I can't tell you how I know what I know. I can't tell the government either. They don't have my special information. If I tell them, they might think I'm a terrorist too, just because I know so much about the real ones. And we need you, I said. I can't do it alone. You're the only one who can do this, I said. I still don't want to do it, she said with a frown. She would complain even more once she knew all the things I wasn't sharing with her. We went over the plan again and again. I pointed out all the mistakes I had seen in past tries. At 11 o'clock, we started the first part of the plan. Julie had a simple job, but it was very important and a bit tough. We had packed a baggy hoodie and sweatpants from home that morning. Julie pulled them on over her clothes. She also grabbed the tire iron from the Maybach and put it in her biggest purse. Remember, walk in the door exactly at 11:17. You'll have 7 minutes to get ready, she said. I understand. I'll be ready. She paused for a moment. Thank you for letting me be part of this. It means a lot to me. She quickly jumped out of the car and walked away, wiping her eyes as she went. We were just a block away from the embassy, an easy walk for Julie. She waited on the sidewalk until 11:17, then hurried through the doors into the lobby. The night worker and the security guard were both in the restroom. The guard always took his break at this time, so I had to think of a plan for the lobby worker. I had added something to his Chinese food to make him feel unwell. It took me a few days to figure out how much to use. He kept going to the restroom, but I needed him to be away when the security guard arrived. With no one in the lobby, Julie quickly walked across the room and down a hallway to the security offices. A month ago, I had given one of the daytime staff some money to share the door code with me. She typed the code into the keypad, and the door unlocked with a soft click. The first room was where the guards worked. It had screens showing live feeds from the lobby, elevators, and other public spaces in the building. I had told Julie where the cameras were and reminded her to keep her hoodie on. The security offices were made up of several rooms. There was a main desk for the guard, a bathroom where he was at the moment, a break room for snacks and rest, and a bunk room for extra staff when needed. Since there was only one guard on duty at night, the bunk room would not be used. Julie could stay there until the trouble, as long as she stayed silent. With Julie settled, we enjoyed our night drive until 2 a.m. 2 a.m. I parked the Maybach in the garage under the tall building, using the entrance on E56th Street. The garage had an automatic ticket and payment system. This late at night, there were only a few cars, so I found a quiet spot and waited. 3:15 a.m. The bad guys arrived and set up their barriers. They harmed the lobby attendant and the security guard, along with 6 other unfortunate people who were working late in the embassy building. Julie had to hide under the bunk bed in the security room. The intruders quickly looked around but were only expecting one guard, so they didn't search thoroughly. Sung, Mi-suk, and I were listening closely to the updates on the radio about the situation. It was a high-tech device that could pick up the signals the terrorists were using, as long as I had their secret code. If we really wanted to, we could even send them a message. Sung was getting more and more worried, and Mi-suk was getting angrier by the minute. "Why are we just sitting here while they hurt those people?" Mi-suk shouted. "You knew this would happen. Why aren't we doing anything?" "I'm sorry," I replied, feeling a deep sense of regret. I thought hard about how to go after them while they were moving, but there was no good way. If we tried to attack before they got settled, they would set off the bomb. It's a huge one. It could take out many more than just 8 people if it explodes. The only chance we have is to strike when they are spread out and relaxed. Sung looked worried. "How big is this bomb?" "Very big. Bigger than the bombing in Oklahoma City." "Wow. I wish I could help everyone, but that bomb can't go off. So get ready. It's almost time to act." We gave the terrorists until 4 a.m. to settle in. At 4:03 a.m., I turned to Mi-suk. You're up. The sniper team will check in at 4:11. You need to make your move by 4:13. I know what I have to do. I just hope you do your part too. Mi-suk's job was to take out the sniper and his spotter. She couldn't just wait like I could. I am not sure how she reached them without being noticed or causing a fuss, but Mi-suk was definitely the best among us at this. From the very first attempt, she always managed to handle her tasks well, unlike the rest of us, who kept messing things up. She asked me many questions about the sniper team's location, even about details that seemed unimportant to me. She then walked away through the parking garage, heading toward the stairs that led up to the sniper team. I drove the Maybach to the parking garage's exit on 57th St., right across from the embassy. I turned off the lights so the two lookouts wouldn't see them coming from under the tall building. There was a barricade blocking the entrance and exit of the parking garage, but I didn't feel scared about that. At 4:08 a.m., I called the police. I wanted to make sure I was safe. 911, what's your emergency? There are some people in the building at 57th and Park Avenue who are acting suspicious. They say they have a bomb. Sir, can I have your name and location, please? Officers are on their way. There's no time. I need to stop them now. Sir, please don't. I ended the call with the dispatcher. With terrorists involved and a bomb threat, the police wouldn't rush in. They would need to call in a special team and the bomb squad. By the time they arrived, everything would be decided one way or another. 4:09 a.m. I drove close to the barrier, just far enough away so the guards couldn't see me. 4:11 a.m. All the different guards spoke to the North Korean in the security room. He was the one in charge of the soldiers, sitting at the control center with all the camera screens. He would check on the different teams again in 12 minutes. I texted Julie, who had her phone on silent, to let her know it was safe. This was our chance. At 4:12 a.m., Mi-suk took out the lookout on the 9th floor of the tall building by breaking his neck. She grabbed his quiet gun, walked down the hallway, and used it to shoot the sniper from behind. He never knew she was close by. 4:13 a.m. Julie quietly left the bunk room and approached the North Korean guard at his post. She hit him on the head with the tire iron from the car. 4:15 a.m. Mi-suk was prepared with the sniper rifle. 4:17 a.m. Mi-suk took her shot. 2 quick blasts, less than a second apart. Thump, thump. One guard went down, then the other. Both were clean hits. At the same time, I pressed down on the gas pedal of the car. The Maybach 62 is very heavy, weighing 6,000 pounds before you add the strong armor and bulletproof glass. It felt like I was driving a tank with almost 600 horsepower. I went right through the big wooden barrier as if it wasn't there and sped across the street. Mi-suk was amazing. She did her job perfectly the first night, so I could almost time her movements down to the second. The second lookout didn't even notice as the Maybach came out of the parking garage. Going fast was very important here. The worker in the lobby could see one of the guards outside through a window. He didn't see what happened when the guard's head burst, but we were short on time. I sped the car up to 20 miles per hour and crashed through the double doors into the lobby. I quickly turned left toward the information desk. The worker there was not ready. Instead of grabbing the big machine gun, he took his small pistol from the counter. He took 3 shots before the Maybach crashed into the kiosk, taking him down with it. I have to admit, he was a skilled shooter. All 3 of his bullets hit right in the middle of the windshield in front of me. Luckily, that windshield was bulletproof. We still needed to hurry. We were not safe yet. I left the car running and asked Sung to stay behind to handle the radio. I jumped out and grabbed the body of the mercenary I had knocked down. I grabbed his radio and kept it close. While we waited in the parking garage, we listened closely to the terrorists as they spoke over their radios. Sung's main task was to pay close attention to the North Korean who was in charge from the security room. Once Julie knocked him out, Sung would need to use the radio and act like he was him. It was a role he was good at. He and the North Korean came from villages that were just 10 miles apart. A wide, empty area separated them. After listening for an hour, Sung learned to mimic his voice and way of speaking. He could trick even the other North Koreans, especially if they were on the radio. Now we needed to clarify the noise. The 3 other North Koreans were in the ambassador's office on the 4th floor. That office was built to keep sounds out. They most likely didn't hear anything, but there were 2 guards in the embassy lobby who would have heard a loud noise. "What was that sound down there?" one of them asked. Sung replied, "I can't see anything on the cameras. It must have come from outside." Now it was my turn to speak. The sniper was from South Africa, and I had practiced his voice for a month. Some drunk person didn't see the barriers. They swerved and bumped into the corner of the building. "Are we in trouble?" Sung asked. "Do we need to hurry up?" "No, everything is fine," I answered. The man quickly drove his car away from the building. It looked fine. We were in the clear. That should keep the bosses upstairs pleased for at least the next 10 minutes. I hurried back to the security office. Julie had let me in. The North Korean man she had knocked out was slumped in his chair in front of the screens. Julie was always too nervous to fully use the swing, so he was just lying there, not conscious. I lifted the quiet gun I had taken from the guard in the lobby. Thwap, thwap, thwap. I shot him 3 times in the chest. Julie let out a loud gasp. "Sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier, but we can't leave any witnesses. We can't let them tell a different story than the one we plan to share with the police and the government. If we let one person live, they'll tell everything, and our story won't make sense anymore. These people were ready to hurt many innocent lives. I won't feel bad at all." "All right," I said. "We need to keep going. Did you turn off the security cameras?" "Yes. Right after I dealt with that guy, I switched off the cameras like you said. There were some things I didn't want anyone to find out later. I couldn't let there be a video of Julie leaving the security office. She was meant to be in the car. If they saw her come out, they would wonder how she got in and notice someone entered 4 hours before the bad guys showed up. Now, the recordings would be empty from 4:13 onward. They would have to believe us about what happened. Just as I couldn't let any of the terrorists escape, I also couldn't let anyone see proof that we were not telling the truth about tonight. When someone asked me how I knew all that I did, I couldn't share the whole story. The officials would never accept that I was stuck in a time loop. They would dig deep into my life to figure out how I already knew about a nuclear attack. Do you know what they call that? So I had to tell some lies. Julie had to do it too, even though it hurt her. I couldn't have anyone seeing or recording things that would go against the story I had created. I made sure the cameras were turned off. Julie had messed that up in the past. It was 4:21. "Okay," I said. "Here's the control panel for the elevators. In 2 minutes, I need you to press this button. Understand?" "Understood." "After you do that, get in the back of the Maybach and wait there." Julie hugged me goodbye as I was leaving. I hugged her back. I ran through the lobby toward the stairs, giving Sung a thumbs up as I passed. His work on the radio was finished. Now I had 7 minutes to finish this. At 4:28, the North Koreans would start a 30-minute countdown on the nuclear device. I didn't know how to stop the timer, so I had to reach it first. Sung was now in charge of cleaning up. I dropped the radio I had taken from the guard in the lobby near the body. Sung was supposed to grab that radio and the 2 others from the dead guards outside, then turn off their codes. Misuk was doing the same with the radios from the sniper team. We couldn't say we heard anything on our car radio if all their radios were still coded. I told both of them to take the radios out from under their shirts so they wouldn't leave fingerprints on the buttons. While they did that, I ran up the stairs to the 4th floor. When I got to the door leading to the 4th floor lobby, I raised my gun and waited for Julie to send the elevator up. I heard the ding when the elevator arrived. I pushed open the stairwell door and stepped out with my gun ready. Both guards standing by the elevator turned to look. I aimed and shot the guard on the right 2 times in the back. The other guard tried to turn around, but I shot him 2 times too. They both fell down. I walked over to them and made sure by putting 1 more bullet in each of their heads. I had come a long way since feeling sick at the sight of blood on the first night I faced one of them. At the door to the ambassador's office, I stopped for a moment. I had reached this point 6 times already. 4:25 a.m. "Time to go," I whispered. I pushed through the door and saw a scene I recognized well. Cameras were placed all around the room, pointing toward the center. In the middle was the nuclear bomb. It was a tall metal box about 6 feet long, looking like a slim coffin with a keypad on top. They brought it in on furniture dollies. 2 of the attackers stood over the scared ambassador and his family. One held the wife's hair tightly. The other faced a camera on the far side of the room, shouting angry words against South Korea and the U.S. The third person was next to the bomb. He stood between the bomb and me. All the North Koreans had remote controls for detonating it. I warned Julie not to make a sound near the one in the security office. The three of them placed their triggers on top of the bomb. One of them stayed close, always ready. I raised my gun and shot at the man next to the bomb. He was a really tough guy. I wasn't a skilled enough shooter to aim for his head. In the past, I had learned that if I shot him less than 4 times, he could still press the button to set off the bomb. I threw away the empty gun. The 2 North Korean soldiers were frozen in surprise, not believing what just happened. This was my chance to say something brave. I had thought about it a lot. I thought about saying something strong and patriotic like, "Not in my country." But that's just not who I am. Instead, I chose to quote a movie. It felt more like me. I came here to chew gum and kick butt, and I'm all out of gum. There was silence after that, and then the ambassador's teenage daughter giggled. Good for her. One of the North Koreans suddenly ran for the detonators. I moved with him. It was a race. We were running at the same speed, but he slowed down as he got closer, ready to grab the button. I didn't hold back. As I got near, I jumped up and kicked him hard on the side of his head. My foot hit him right on his jaw, turning his head to the side. It sounded like a loud crack. I stumbled as I landed and had to quickly get back on my feet, but the last bad guy just stood there, staring in shock. He didn't have a weapon, and I stood in the way of the bomb. He could only reach the controls by getting past me. He charged at me with quick kicks and punches. He was using a type of Korean martial art called Hapkido. But Sung had taught me his own way of Hapkido, which was better for real fights. I hit him several times in the body and face. He was getting tired quickly, but I wasn't giving up today. When he went for a high kick, I grabbed his leg. I weighed a lot more than him, about 60 pounds, so when I pulled him forward and struck him with my knee, it lifted him off the ground. I still had hold of his leg, and he couldn't land safely on just one. He fell hard and hit the back of his head on the floor. I followed him down and threw an elbow into his throat with all my strength. He lay there, gasping and hurting as I walked over to the ambassador's family. I spoke to them in Korean. "It's okay. You are safe now. The police will be here soon." "Thank you. Thank you very much. Those men. They said there is a nuclear bomb." "I heard that too. The experts will be here soon to handle it." I glanced back at the last North Korean, who was still moving slightly. "How about we take your wife and daughter away from here? The waiting area is quiet. Why don't you all sit out there while we wait for help to come?" The ambassador nodded and led his family out of the room. As soon as the door closed, I dashed to the laptop the attackers were using to store all the videos they were recording. They planned to send it to their partners and let them share it proudly. I had different plans for the video. First, I turned off all the cameras. I walked around to check that each one was really off. Then I collected all the video and saved it to a cloud storage account. After that, I used my laptop to send emails to my parents and Julie's. I included the video and wrote a brief note saying we might be held for questioning, but this is what you need to know. The video would explain everything on its own. The terrorists made it very clear about what they planned to do, saying it in both Korean and English. Then I would rush into the room and be the hero. I really hoped this would reach my father, who used to be a lawyer before he retired. Maybe I was being a bit too anxious, letting my worries take control. I thought that the government might want to keep this quiet, and that could cause problems for me. It was better to be careful. Once I finished my task, I made sure to change the radios of all the people I was dealing with on that floor. Now their radios were set to a channel that anyone could listen to. I went down to the lobby to check if Sung had changed the car radio. I picked up the baggy sweat clothes that Julie and I had worn over our outfits earlier and headed down to the basement. There was a furnace down there for getting rid of papers. I was just returning to the lobby when a lot of police cars pulled up. They filled the street from one side to the other. I checked my watch. 5:03, I had made it to Saturday. I felt mixed emotions. The time loop had been really hard at times, making everything feel like it didn't matter. It felt a lot like a waiting place where nothing really happened. Yet I was grateful to be stuck there. Of course, the main reason was that I had stopped many people from dying. I also thought I was becoming a better person because of it. Normally, I wouldn't think much when I saw a chance to escape, but now I was not so sure. I wondered what I could have done if I had stayed in the time loop just a bit longer. The loop had been a special chance for me to get better, but I could only see the bright side now that I knew it would end. Once again, I thought about what the time loop really was and how it functioned. I was starting to accept that I might never find real answers. When the loop started with the nuclear blast, I believed there was a scientific reason behind it. The amazing force that was let loose seemed to change time somehow, but that answer didn't really satisfy me. For one thing, I was the only one affected, and I wasn't even close to the blast area at first. Also, it didn't explain how I had suddenly gained skills and friends who were just right for handling this issue. I was more sure than ever that some kind of intelligence was behind all this, but who or what was leading the way? And just as importantly, why did this happen to me? I shook myself out of my daydream. There were more important things to handle right now. Sung and Julie were already inside the Maybach, and I hurried to join them. I wanted us all in the safe vehicle in case the police came into the building. There was no need to take chances, especially since I felt sure that if I died now, it would be for good. So far, the police were just around the outside of the building, but I knew they wouldn't wait forever. I thought they would try to reach out to the terrorists. Later, Misuk told me that the police got there less than 10 minutes after I called. They found 2 bodies lying in front of the building with their heads looking strange. This made them take my reports about armed terrorists with a bomb seriously. It took them almost an hour to get everything organized. The street outside was crowded with special teams ready to deal with terrorists, including SWAT, the bomb squad, and people who talk to hostages. I wasn't sure how they usually handle situations like this, but I definitely did not want to be in their shoes. My experience with these terrorists showed me that they would have set off their devices at the first sight of the police. Fortunately for them, I had already handled it. Sung, Julie, and I were talking quickly on our cell phones. Sung was speaking to his sister, who was in the tall building across the street. He told her to put down any weapons she had taken from the sniper team and to find a safe place to wait for the police. He suggested a different floor, far away from the bodies of the men she had hurt. We all thought the police would be very tense when they arrived to see 4 civilians and 11 dead bodies, 19 if you count the innocent people the terrorists killed when they came in. Julie called her parents, waking them up and guiding them to the emails I had sent before hanging up. Then she called a TV news station. She didn't share many details, just that there was a terrorist situation at 57th and Park. We wanted to make sure the news knew something was happening, in case the police presence hadn't already given them a clue. I called my dad in Florida first. He usually woke up early, so he was already awake. "Hi, Dad. Can you check your email? I sent you something." "Is it another cat video? I told you not to send me those, Sam." I had never sent him a cat video. He was just teasing me. I couldn't help but smile when I thought about how surprised he would be when he watched the video I sent him. What is this? It looks like some kind of strange video. I can't understand what they're saying. They're speaking Korean. If you watch it until the end, they talk in English sometimes. I sent you 4 video files. They all show the same thing from different viewpoints. I want you to see them all at some point, but right now, please skip to the last few minutes. I'll wait. He paused for a moment. I could barely hear the video playing on the phone. I listened as my dad gasped when the door suddenly opened. There was a heavy silence after he saw his son, the Wall Street trader, hurt 3 men. Sam. Son, what did I just see? Was that real? It's real, Dad. All I can say for now is that they were very bad men. You'll understand more when you watch the rest of the video. I promise to answer all your questions later, but for now, I need Jim Watley, the tough lawyer, not Jim Watley, my dad. Even though he was retired, my dad was always a tough and fierce lawyer. I couldn't ask for anyone better to support me. Understood, Jim said, switching into lawyer mode. What kind of problems are we dealing with? I hope there are no problems, I replied. I'm sure I'm correct about this, but that metal box in the video is a nuclear bomb. There will be big problems, and the government will be very involved. I need you to help me make sure that none of the trouble coming our way affects me or my friends. Oh, wow! Nuclear! My father quickly moved past his surprise and focused on the situation again. Which friends? Who else is with them? Julie and a couple of people you don't know. Sung and Mi Suk Kenji. Listen, I said quickly before he could ask more. I'm in the building where that video was made, waiting for the police to come in. I can't talk right now. I need you to keep that video safe, away from anyone in the government. I'll be fine as long as there's a video to prove what happened. All right. I'll make some copies and keep them safe. I care about you, son. Stay safe. I care about you too, Dad. Thanks. Next, I called the police. We had switched off our phones before everything happened. The police had been trying to reach me ever since I called in the report about the attack. I called them back and told them who I was. I told the dispatcher part of what happened. I explained that all the attackers were gone, the ambassador's family was safe, and we were sitting in the car by the lobby. Mi-suk was the only one not with us. She was across the street. The police took about 10 minutes to check my story. They went and got Mi-suk and looked at the bodies of the sniper and his assistant. They tried calling different phones in the embassy until the ambassador finally picked up. He agreed with what I was telling the dispatch team. About 20 soldiers in full gear rushed into the lobby. They split up to check the building. One soldier came over to our car and signaled for us to stay put. After that, we experienced days of heavy examination. Sung and Mi-suk still didn't realize that the bomb was nuclear. Julie and I were aware but hadn't shared that news yet. The sight of foreign terrorists had already brought a lot of government agents to the area. When the bomb squad finally saw the bomb, it felt like a crowd of agents was everywhere. The close watch I had been worried about became very real. I did get a chance to speak with my dad again, even though the FBI was against it. They had someone keeping a close eye on me every minute. They wanted me isolated from everyone until they got all the information they needed from me. But my earlier call had started things moving. My father had been calling a lot, insisting that he needed to talk to me. The problem was that getting a lawyer made the interviews tense. The people asking questions went from uncertain to doubtful. On the bright side, my dad had reached out to a law firm in New York, and now all four of us had a lawyer with us at every interview. This meant the government couldn't separate us and interrogate us endlessly, which I thought they really wanted to do. We spent our days in a hotel near the FBI offices so we could get to them easily. They wanted to keep us apart, but our lawyers said no. We agreed to help, but we didn't want to be treated like criminals. So, no long questioning sessions, and no being locked away from everyone. Even with all my planning, I couldn't find a way to explain our attack on the terrorists without raising doubts. Also, some of the things I did to hide what really happened still left signs behind, even if they made the truth less clear. We had created a weak reason for how we found out about the dangerous plan, but it was hard to believe that 4 everyday people would suddenly rush in and confront 11 armed attackers without any warning. We had turned off the security cameras inside the building before we went in, so the only thing recorded was me rushing into the ambassador's office and dealing with the last 3 North Koreans. Naturally, the sudden cut in the video feeds raised a lot of questions. No one thought it was a coincidence that the cameras went dark right when we started our operation. Everything about the security room seemed wrong to them. Why would the person in charge of security turn off the cameras? He had never paid much attention to them before. How did I end up inside? That door only opens with a special code. Why was the North Korean inside shot and hit on the head? My answers? I don't know. The door was unlocked. I hit him after I shot him, maybe from the rush of it all. The first question really troubled them since I had no clear answer. I knew that turning off the cameras would raise questions. There wasn't as much doubt if the police couldn't see what we had done. The last straw was the radios. Why did the terrorists bring costly encrypted radios only to talk on an open channel? Sadly, the FBI checked just about everything, including the radios. They didn't find any of our fingerprints because we had been careful to avoid leaving any. What they discovered were strange marks where we had touched the dials with our shirts. Even more important, they found some of the terrorists' fingerprints. If the terrorists weren't using the secret codes on their radios, why were their fingerprints all over the dials, blend the prints with neat spaces that seemed like they had been cleaned? If we didn't have lawyers always with us, we might have just vanished for some time. Most of the questions were about me. In our story, Julie and Sung stayed in the car the entire time. We made sure to clean anything they had touched outside the car. Julie tried her best not to touch anything in the security room and made sure to clean up after herself. Their stories were quite straightforward. They answered the same questions about what happened before the attack, but they were able to say they didn't know anything about what went on outside the building's entrance. Misuk had to explain what she did in the tall building, but she was able to tell the truth about almost everything. The only secret she kept was about changing the sniper team's radios. She could honestly say she knew ahead of time where they were getting ready. We had heard them discussing it. We had agreed that if someone else faced a question they couldn't answer, they would pass it to me. I had spent much more time thinking about this than they had. It was my idea. We stood together when we told the police that I had led the attack. Some people doubted that the Wall Street trader was really the one behind the fight against terrorism, but there was a lot of evidence to support it. My fingerprints were all over the steering wheel of the car that hit the lobby guard. 4 of the attackers had been shot with the same gun. My fingerprints were on the gun. I was the only one, except for Misuk, who had any residue from gunfire on me. Then there was the video. The video was my secret weapon, clear proof that I was doing the right thing. Anyone who watched that video would feel a chill, realizing how close we had come to a disaster that could have harmed millions. The North Koreans made it crystal clear that they were on a difficult mission. They intended to cause great harm to Manhattan. The video led to my first warning of going to jail. It showed me walking over to the terrorist's laptop and turning off the video. This angered them a lot. They quickly criticized me for even touching it. They worried that my actions could trigger a disaster. When the tech team said I had used the laptop to copy and send those video files, it was a big deal. Homeland Security was furious. They wanted to see the cloud account where I sent the files. They also wanted to check the email accounts of my parents and Julie's parents. They warned us that we could be charged with serious crimes if we didn't give them all the copies. The next day, my cloud account vanished. I told them to leave me alone. It was a tricky legal issue about whether they could take my things, which I had first. They might be able to in the name of national security, but there was no way they could ever prove I did something wrong. If I made the video known to everyone, and I warned them I would if they bothered me, no jury would find me guilty. There would be chaos if they even thought about charging me. I've made it clear that my dealings with the government were pretty tense, and they were, in a way. But for every bad cop trying to squeeze answers out of me, there were 100 good cops who thought I was amazing. My father took the first flight from Florida. He brought along a local law firm to help us. They looked out for us. But thinking back, I realized we might have been all right on our own. We were surrounded by men and women who worked or lived in Manhattan, and they really depended on us. We had built up a lot of trust. I think every tough person who questioned us had come in from Washington. Our hotel felt like a government meeting place: FBI, CIA, NSA, Homeland Security, and even the ATF. The only person there who didn't work for the government was the chief of police from New York. I think they let him stay as a polite gesture. This whole event was really top secret, but since almost everyone at our hotel had high-level security clearance, most of them had seen either all or part of the terrorists' video. "Why do so many people keep giving you bubble gum?" Julie asked. I laughed. On the first day, all the different government agents were distant as they tried to understand what had happened. After the video was shared widely, people began to be friendlier to us. One day, a woman from the CIA handed me what she called bubble gum. At first, I was confused. It seemed like an odd thing to offer. When I said no, she made a funny face and her friends started to laugh. Soon, I was laughing too when I finally got the joke. From that time on, I kept meeting government agents who offered me bubble gum. I told Julie about my brave speech to the North Koreans. "I'm here to chew bubble gum and fight, and I have no bubble gum left." "You really said that? Knowing people would hear it? You're such a goof," she said. I just smiled. Speaking of my wife, the week we spent as guests of the government opened Julie's eyes to many new things. She went to bed on Thursday night with a loving husband and woke up next to someone who felt like a stranger. It might not have been fair, but I had spent 4 years building a wall between us, while she couldn't do anything to stop it. I had told her that I knew about her other relationships, but I didn't show any anger. I wasn't really upset about it anymore. It felt like time had passed, and I had changed into someone new. I had spent nearly as much time in this situation as I had been married. To feel angry at Julie, I would need to dig deep into feelings that had long since faded away. This was very confusing for Julie. I found out she had been unfaithful, read her diaries, sought some small revenge, and then moved on with my life, all in just one day from her side. We were in a room with 2 queen beds. We felt more like roommates than a married couple. I was polite to her and even acted friendly, but that was the end of it. She really wanted to discuss our relationship, but I kept avoiding the topic until we were finished with Uncle Sam. Any talk about us would mean we'd have to get into the loop. I was too worried about the government overhearing us, so we needed to keep our chats simple and safe. After a week, we'd both had enough. We told our lawyers that the government could have one more meeting with us, and then we were going home. My dad said they had been making a fuss, but they couldn't do much. We had been working with them, but they couldn't keep us unless it was for national security. I made it clear that I would share the video if they took that step. By then, they didn't know how many copies were out there or who had them. I didn't know where everyone was because I had left that to my dad. So I sat alone in a conference room for the last interview. My father wasn't with me. The government had asked for a private meeting. Dad wasn't sure at first, but I agreed. I had practiced my story a lot. I wasn't going to give away anything by mistake. I hoped the help I had given would be remembered when I left the hotel that afternoon. They had already said it was fine for Julie, Sung, and Misuk to go. I wondered what they wanted to ask me and who I would be speaking with. So far, all the interviews had been done by groups of agents. A man with thinning hair and glasses who looked to be in his 60s or 70s walked into the room. "Hello, Mr. Watley. I'm General Bradley Pembroke, retired. I'm the President's National Security Advisor. I've been watching you and your friends this week. I wanted to talk to you before you head home." "It's nice to meet you, General. If you've been keeping up with everything this past week, then I'm not sure what more I can say. I feel like I've said all I can." Pembroke raised an eyebrow at me, looking a bit amused. "I think we both know that's not the case. We might have tired you out with all our questions, but you haven't been very open with your answers." I didn't try to argue. He didn't sound angry. He sounded more like a father who felt let down by his son. I wanted to say sorry to this important man. He had a serious presence that made you want to show respect. "Anyway," he continued, "that's not why I'm here. I'm not trying to get more information from you. I want to discuss our next steps. What are your plans, Mr. Watley?" "What plans? I don't really understand." "Can you move on from this? You have helped the people of this country a lot. We should be proud of what you have done. But doing that would put both you and the country in new danger." My dad had mentioned this before, but I needed to hear it from someone in charge. "What do you mean by danger for me and the country?" I asked. Pembroke linked his fingers together and looked at me seriously. "We must never show how close we were to a big problem. Never. At least not while we're still alive. Remember the fear people felt after 9/11s? How long did it take for people to feel safe flying or going to big events? What would everyone think if they found out that a group of terrorists had somehow sneaked a nuclear weapon into the heart of Manhattan? It was a question meant to provoke thought, but I responded anyway. They would go completely crazy." Pembroke flinched a bit at my choice of words, and I felt foolish. This guy was impressive. If I wasn't careful, I might spill something just because I wanted to impress him. He used his grandfatherly face to make a strong point. "Yes," he said slowly. "That's right. People would panic. Plus, they would ask for answers. We know who is really behind this trouble." "North Korea," I said quickly. He pretended to lock his lips. "As I mentioned, we know who is ultimately responsible. You can be sure that we will respond. But if we can, we want to make our move carefully and with purpose. A crisis has been avoided, and now we have a chance to prevent things from getting worse. People would want an open fight. We could easily find ourselves in a full-blown war. It's much better to deal with this calmly." I trusted his words. News that North Korean terrorists had tried to set off a nuclear bomb in America would make everyone furious. It was hard to think of anything except war that would make people feel better. "And what about you, Mr. Watley? If people found out about your part in what happened recently, your safety might be at risk." "How's that?" "You would be seen as a big hero, but also someone people want to hurt. Some of the bad guys come from a country known for its strong and violent actions, and they can strike anywhere. Also, other dangerous groups would see you as an appealing target, the hero who stepped up to stop an act of terror. It would be very disheartening for Americans if that man faced a terrible fate from other extremists. It would mean you needed to always think about your safety. My father mentioned similar ideas. North Korea did not hesitate to try and eliminate enemies beyond their land. We had not considered that I could also be a target for other radical groups, but now it seemed reasonable. If I became well known for stopping terrorists, I might find myself on the hit list of every group that hated America, and that was nearly all of them. I turned to Pembroke. I used to dream about being famous and rich, but this week changed my mind. What story will the public hear? They can't ignore that there was an attempted terrorist attack, but you and your friends will not be mentioned at all in this story. Anyone who talks about a nuclear part of this situation will be warned quietly first, and if needed, they will be strongly denied later. Because you told the police about terrorists with a bomb, that detail is now known to everyone. All the workers who went into that building were government staff. The NYPD could not enter until the area was safe. Now we can shape the story. He took a brief pause. You didn't tell the police your name, but you called from your own phone that's registered to you. That's an issue. From what we know, only a handful of officers are aware of who you are. We have worked hard to keep that information hidden. It's much better for you and for our country if we let everyone think that this attack was stopped by government teams. So Uncle Sam is just going to come in later and take all the credit, huh? I replied, feeling a bit bitter. Pembroke looked a bit embarrassed by my words. Sadly, yes. No offense, Mr. Watley, but when it comes to stopping terrorists, you are not really part of this world. You are a civilian. You did your job very well. Some might even say it looked a bit strange how well you did it. But you won't scare off the world's extreme groups. They would just say you got lucky. I thought that was a bit rude, but I couldn't think of a good reply. Instead, I stuck my tongue out at Pembroke. He looked surprised. Then he laughed. No, he said. You are surely not like James Bond. That's the person we want everyone to believe stopped that bomb. A group of very skilled government workers. If North Korea or anyone else ever discovered how close they were... He stopped speaking to let me think. They would quickly try again. Exactly. We don't know how they got this far this time. This is now the top focus for every law enforcement and intelligence group in the United States. It's also why you, who should be celebrated right now, have not received much attention. It's clear that you know more than you are sharing. We are trying to stop another attempt, whether it happens here or somewhere else. Any information you do not share could be the key to saving many lives. I took a deep breath. I am completely sure that I don't know anything about how they got the bomb into the country. I don't know anything about what they did before they reached the embassy. Then how did you know they would be there? Pembroke asked. I didn't. I was in the right place at the right time, I said strongly. It was my usual response whenever the government said I knew something before it happened. Pembroke started to speak, but I interrupted him. After this, I'm going home. I get why you want answers. I truly hope you find the terrorists and stop any more attacks. I'd like to give you a made-up scenario, if that's all right. Sure, go ahead. Imagine, just for a moment, that I was keeping a secret about what I knew and how I learned it. Let's say I really did know something ahead of time. Well, in this story, that knowledge would have come to me just a few hours before, not days. Have you watched the whole video, sir? Did you see and hear what the North Koreans planned? I did, he answered. If SEAL Team 6 had stormed that building, what do you think would have happened? Are you saying you know better than the Navy SEALs, Mr. Watley? No, I said quickly. That's not what I mean. You know how the terrorists were set up. 4 North Koreans were in 2 places, each with remote triggers. They were in touch with other members of their group who were on different floors and in different buildings. Could the SEALs have caught them all off guard? Could they have acted so quickly and quietly that none of the North Koreans had a chance to set off the bomb? Pembroke looked worried, but he stood up for his team. Mr. Watley, if you, a stock trader, could pull it off, I promise the U.S. military can do it even better. Especially with what you seem to know now. But that's the tricky part, General Pembroke. If you think about it, knowing what you know now, would you have planned an attack? With 4 people ready to act, would you have taken the chance to enter that building? Remember, we're just talking about a what-if situation. This made him stop and really consider the question. No. No, I don't think I would ask for that. What will you do then? How can you stop them if you can't go after them directly? My first job would be to step in before they get there. No, I cut in. You might know where they've been, but I don't know what they did that Friday. I guess it was in or near New York. You can't get to them before they get to a crowded place. You can't take a chance with a direct attack. What do you do? Pembroke sighed in annoyance. He was a clever guy. He understood what I was trying to say. Looking back, if we had known how fragile things were, we wouldn't have entered the building or tried to reach out. We would have fired several missiles at that building until it was just a heap of rubble, and the nuclear device was nothing but a bent piece of metal. Would there have been a lot of damage to nearby areas with an airstrike like that? I asked. No, very little, if any. With today's precision weapons, we could have taken that building down to the ground without hurting the buildings next to it. There might be some loose objects flying around, but since the street in front of the building is mostly clear, very few people would get hurt. What about the ambassador's family? Pembroke thought for a moment. In this situation, we might have to sadly accept the loss of Mr. Kuhn's family to save more lives. That's one way to look at it, General, I replied. You have an answer for this made-up scenario. If I had given you more warning, 3 more innocent people might have lost their lives. The building is in ruins, and now we have an even bigger problem with how people see us. But what makes you able to decide that, Mr. Watley? We would only use an airstrike if we thought the danger of a big explosion was too high. If the United States government won't risk the lives of millions in New York, why do you think you can? I lifted my hands to my face and sighed. It was early in the day, but the talk was tiring. I don't have a clear answer for you, General Pembroke. I can't say anything that will make sense to you. All I can say is that on that day, I felt it was my chance to make a difference. I did it. It's over now. There might be many people whose job is to question what I did, but I've always thought that thinking about what if is a big waste of time. Pembroke sighed. Are you sure you don't have anything else to say? If I had any information that could stop another attack, I would tell you right away. But I don't. I stood up, getting ready to leave. So, is this it? Will I just disappear back into the background? I'm not going to see a bunch of workers hanging around my neighborhood, am I? No, Mr. Watley. No one will be watching you. By the way, I have to say, I really admire your quick thinking with that video. Some things would have kept bothering you forever if you hadn't been able to let them go. Just you and I talking here, you were right. If the video got out, we couldn't do anything about it. But I want you to know that any fame you might get would come with a big price, for you and for the country. Honestly, I didn't mind. I was just glad that time was moving forward again. I could finally start living my life again. But I felt I had to complain a bit just to keep up appearances. I get it. I can even see why it makes sense. But it still hurts to know I can save so many lives without any thanks or credit. I know it should feel like a reward in itself. I feel good about what I've done. Still, I have this feeling that the government wouldn't mind if I disappeared. I'm sorry you feel that way, Mr. Watley, Pembroke said, leaning closer. Let me assure you, the country is very thankful for what you have done. In fact, I have permission to share some great news. After a little while, you and your wife, along with the Kenjis, will be invited for a private meeting at the White House. I was surprised and let out a soft whistle. It made sense given the situation, but I was still amazed at the idea of meeting the president. Also, he went on, you and your friends are going to receive a special gift. For the next 5 years, you won't have to pay any taxes, but if any of you move to another state, you will need to pay taxes there. This break from taxes only includes federal, New York, and New Jersey taxes. If you decide to move, we can try to find a solution. Wow, I said, amazed. That was a wonderful gift. It was even better when I thought about how I had made over $7 million in the stock market before I got out of the time loop. I thought the authorities had no idea about my situation until... I hear you just came into a lot of money. Very quickly. I simply raised my eyebrows and played innocent. If the government checked my bank records, They did it quietly. Still, I wasn't shocked they noticed my new financial status. I wondered how it seemed to others. Just a few days ago, on Thursday, I was a regular guy in a lot of debt. To a tough, kung fu expert millionaire, fighter against terrorists on Friday. I am Batman, I murmured quietly. Oh no, I had lost my focus. I glanced at General Pembroke, who clearly heard me, judging by the slight smile he wore. I cleared my throat and quickly tried to refocus the conversation. I expressed my gratitude to the general for the government's kind support. We quickly moved past my new riches, but looking back, I realized it probably just made people more suspicious of me. We talked about everyday things for a few more minutes. He handed me a card with his phone number on it, just in case I wanted to reach out. Then we shared a little ceremony for saying goodbye, and I went home. In the end, Uncle Sam was more thankful than doubtful. Over the next few weeks, they reached out to me several times to ask questions. Sometimes I could give helpful answers, and sometimes I couldn't. My part in stopping a bad attack was never revealed. The video was not watched by many people, but from then on, I had strangers come up to me and offer bubblegum. There was a big group of spies in New York, and sometimes, when they saw me, I felt like a small celebrity. Most of the time, after I left the hotel that day, I tried to forget what happened at 57th and Park Avenue. I was just an ordinary person. Now I had to return home and see my wife. To be precise, she had been waiting for me to finish my meeting with the National Security Advisor, so she was coming home with me. But how much longer would it be our home? That was the big question. We had an uneasy train ride to New Jersey, which was followed by an awkward drive home. I hadn't really worried about my Ford Taurus until we got back to New Jersey. Of course, my car was taken away since I had left it all week, so we had to take a taxi. As soon as we entered the house, everything spilled out. "Please talk to me, Sam. This silence is driving me crazy." We had chatted a lot during the past week, but I understood what she meant. We hadn't discussed our relationship. "Come on," I said. "Let's sit down and sort this out. I'm sorry I waited so long, but I really didn't want to talk about our marriage while we were staying with the government. I didn't want anything to distract me from what really matters. They're not more important to me, Sam. Nothing is more important to me than our marriage. I know you might not think that." "I do think that, Julie," I cut in. She seemed ready to explain more to me. "You really believe me?" "Yes, I believe you. I think our marriage means the world to you. I believe you care about me. I think if I give you another chance, you won't make the same mistakes." Julie's face looked puzzled but full of hope. "That's not really the issue, Julie. Feelings have never been the problem. At least they've never been your problem. The real issue is that what you do doesn't match how you feel." "I know," she said with a sniffle. "What I did was wrong. I never wanted to hurt you." I sighed. What could I say to that? From her point of view, it was true. But it was so frustrating. "Well, you did. You hurt me more than I ever thought someone could. You took something really special from my life and turned it into something untrue. You made me doubt myself deeply. It took a long time for me to get my sense of self back and get ready to move forward." "Move forward?" Julie asked. "Does that mean you've already made up your mind? Don't I get a chance to try and fix things for us?" "I've had 4 years to think about this, Julie. It would be really sad if I had not figured out what to do all this time. You might think it's unfair that you didn't know what I was thinking while I was deciding about our marriage. But for me, it feels completely fair. You kept things hidden from me for years and made me look foolish. You had many chances. We had our whole time together. If you had ever taken a moment to think about me first, then maybe there was still hope for us." Julie had tears on her cheeks. After more than a week to think about everything, she had calmed down from the cries I had seen each time I spoke to her in the loop. But she still had moments when she would cry. I think staying in the hotel, where I acted more like a roommate than a partner, made her realize how much had changed. "So what will you do, Sam?" Julie asked sadly. "Do you not love me anymore? Can you ever forgive me?" "I still care about you, Julie. I don't know if I would say it is love right now. At first, I wanted to hurt you as part of my plan, but I changed my mind. I spent a lot more time with you during my last few weeks in the time loop, and I remembered why I cared about you in the first place. So, no more hurting each other." The only thing you need to get ready for is that I'm going to share all the secrets of my so-called friends." Julie's face turned white. "What do you mean?" "Well, at first I thought about getting your diaries and your sister's too, and sharing them with all your friends. Does Samantha know that Emma was with her husband? Do any of the husbands know what went on at Claire's party? I thought about keeping it quiet, for your sake. But that group of people who used to call themselves my friends never cared about me. Unlike you, they haven't earned any trust in my eyes. I might not gather proof, but I will still be sending many emails. Let them figure things out for themselves. All the hidden secrets, at least the ones you and your sister knew, are going to come out. I will show them the respect they never showed me. I hope they all get what they deserve." Julie paused, trying to understand what this meant for her. Her friends obviously didn't care much about her mistakes. They had known for years, but they might not be so kind when her problems affected them. And then there was her sister. "Sam, please don't hurt Emma, please. Steve will leave her and she'll be heartbroken. She isn't like me. She hasn't made those choices much. Please." "My dear sister-in-law, my favorite member of your family told me that I was the brother she always wanted. She enjoyed talking with almost everyone she knew about how unskilled her sister's husband was in bed. Just thinking about this was making me upset again. It was reopening feelings of anger that I thought I'd moved past." "No," I said. "I'm not going to explain all the reasons why you and your friends and family deserve what's coming. You all will get off easy, especially you. Be grateful that I want to leave this part of my life behind. I'm still young. I can create a better life for myself, and there is no room in it for our old friends. So I'll send my emails, and then they will be gone from my life." "What about me?" Julie whispered. "Am I just part of your past now?" I took a deep breath. Yes. As Julie curled up and cried, I reflected on my choice. I had really thought about keeping some sort of connection with my wife. Not as a married couple, though. That was out of the question. To put it clearly, I just didn't feel any attraction to her anymore. The idea of sharing a bed with her made me uneasy. Part of that unease came from remembering all the other men she had been with while we were still together. But the bigger issue was that I could never forget why she had gone to them. I always felt like I had to act a certain way if I spent the night with her again. She had taken away the romance we once had. I thought about staying friends with Julie. She had been my best friend for many years. We still got along well, and I believed that if we could forget about our marriage, we could have a good friendship, but I realized that being just friends wouldn't really work. We would always be reminded of our broken relationship. Even though I felt ready to end our marriage, Julie wasn't there yet. It would be really hard for her if I kept in touch but did not show her the love she still wanted. That seemed like a bad situation for both of us. No, it was better to part ways completely. Julie was young. She would move on. I didn't want to be reminded of my past love life every day. Julie tried a few times to change my mind, but it was tough for her. My feelings for her had faded. I didn't cry or get angry. I stayed calm when she tried to discuss our relationship. Long before the divorce was finished, she accepted that I was leaving. The divorce? It was probably the easiest one I've ever seen. We didn't need any lawyers. I filled out the papers myself, and Julie agreed to everything. You can do that if both people agree on everything. Our divorce was straightforward. I packed my clothes and my things and left everything else for Julie. Before the time loop, I couldn't have done that because of all the money we owed. But I used some of the money I made from trading to pay off the house and Julie's car. The only debt I left her was her student loans. With just property taxes to worry about, she could still live in our large house. It might look like I was giving her a lot for being unfaithful, but I felt like I got a good deal. If we had gone to court, she could have received a few $1,000,000 because I got lucky financially while we were still married. Julie didn't know the exact amount I had, but she knew it was a lot, and she could have tried to claim some of it. Also, she helped save many lives in New York, and I always remembered that she got hurt for me. She deserved some recognition for that. I also gave big gifts of cash to Sung and Misuk. Once all the papers were filled out and sent in, I packed a U-Haul and prepared to leave New Jersey and my old life behind. Julie and I shared one last hug. I felt a bit emotional. We thought about what could have been and what never happened. If you can ever find it in your heart to give me another chance, Sam, I just smiled sadly. We both knew this was the end. I got comfortable in my new apartment in downtown Manhattan, right next to Central Park. I spent $1.5 million. After I paid Julie's bills and bought a new house, I still had over $4 million left in the bank. With no taxes to pay for a while, I felt secure for the future. If I followed a simple investment plan, that money could last me for a long time. I had been working at an investment firm since I finished college, but I was still too young to stop working. I had enjoyed a relaxed life during the time loop, and it didn't feel right to just give it all up now. I was excited about facing a new challenge. Speaking of which, my time at Broadwell and Marks had come to an end. While I was at Hotel Fed, I had taken some time off work, using the same reason I did on my first day: problems in my marriage. To say they didn't care at all would be putting it lightly. The work environment was tough and focused only on business. There was no room for personal issues to get in the way of making money, so I would have been in a tricky spot if I had chosen to go back there. I was glad I didn't plan to stay there for long. The time loop had taken away much of my excitement for my job. After college, I spent 6 years reading the financial news like it was the most important book in the world. I was always looking for the next big chance or a way to outsmart the market, both for the company and for myself. While I was stuck in the loop, it felt like I was playing a video game with tricks to win. Earning money in the stock market became as easy as breathing. I had changed $20,000 into $7 million, all for me. I didn't feel excited about helping Ma and Pa Kettle earn a little more from their shared money. I still paid attention to the market for my own investments, but my time as a corporate worker was done. It seemed that Broadwell and Marks wasn't too happy with me either. I went in knowing I wanted to quit, but it quickly became clear that the bosses were really upset with me. I think I mentioned before that the top managers kept an eye on the trading accounts of their employees. They actually wanted us to trade a lot. My success in trading had caught their attention. My supervisor, Ben, told me about all the cold stares and rude comments I was receiving. "Sam, what on earth happened? Forget that. Everyone in the office knows what you did. How did you manage it? Erickson put 3 people on the task of breaking down every trade you made to find out your secret. They've been at it all week." Oh, I see now. They weren't upset that I became a millionaire so quickly. They were upset because I didn't tell them how I did it. And they had no clue about my method. After talking more with Ben, I understood everything clearly. Stock traders are always searching for a math formula that can beat the market. The issue is that people have too much influence on the market for a computer to guess stock changes correctly. People act in unpredictable ways, and this makes companies and investors act unpredictably too. But that doesn't stop math experts from trying to make prediction models. In the area of Broadwell and Marks, 2 ideas formed about how I suddenly became very successful. The first idea was that I had created my own way of trading, but no one really believed it. People talked about it, but most thought the second idea was much more likely, that I had cheated in some way or tricked the system. On my last trading day, there were 217 different stock trades on July 15th, and not a single one of them lost money. I had been making money on every trade I did, which was a level of success that seemed almost impossible. The companies and financial products I traded were very different from each other. Because of this, I didn't think I could have been using inside information, which is a common type of investment fraud. I really didn't think the SEC would pay much attention to me. In the big scheme of things, $7 million was a small amount on Wall Street, and I was sure any investigation would find nothing wrong. There was nothing to discover. As far as I know, there isn't any rule against using money information from time travel. I couldn't tell Ben or anyone else how I did it. He and the other bosses at Broadwell and Marks thought I had found something, a way to guess how stocks would move, probably something against the law. They didn't worry about what I had done wrong. They just wanted to take my idea for themselves. But they were going to be let down, and they were aware of it. They wouldn't have told anyone about it, even if they could. This made me want to leave my job even more. I had made people expect too much from me, and that caused jealousy among my bosses, so I found myself without a job. I moved into my new apartment and started searching for work. I decided to follow Sung's example and got a part-time job as an interpreter. Most of my work was with the New York court system. I also helped businesses when they needed to talk to companies from other countries. I really liked the job, and it paid quite well, too. It also helped me practice the languages I had learned and encouraged me to keep studying them more. Working as an interpreter and managing my own projects made my savings grow steadily. Now, I hardly worry about money at all. My romantic life was content, though not very exciting. The first woman I tried to get to know was Misuk. She was fit, attractive, and a bit wild. She was like a panther in how she moved and carried herself. Sadly, she thought of me as low as dirt on the bottom of her shoe. I had hoped that our shared love for Hapkido, long walks on the beach, and working together to protect New York would bring us closer. I imagined spending time together would help us understand each other better. But I had to face the truth. She would never be my friend, and I could forget about anything more. I never really learned why she felt that way about me. Maybe she was just a really unhappy person. While I was getting to know people, I noticed a few women I might like. It took some time to think about each of them, but I realized that none of them made me feel excited. That didn't mean I didn't have fun. I was happy being single, and even though I hadn't found the one, my dating life was still enjoyable. Over the next 2 years, I went out with around 12 women. My relationships lasted from 2 weeks to 6 months. As my 30th birthday came closer, I started to feel uneasy. I've always been a romantic, and I really enjoyed being married until it ended. Around that same time, a new person moved into my building. The top floor of my apartment building had 4 big apartments, each about 2,300 square feet. I lived in the northeast corner with a view of Central Park. The apartment next to mine had been empty for a few weeks. An old dentist and his wife had moved away to a warmer place. I was sitting on my balcony enjoying the day when I got a call from Fred, the building manager. "Mr. Watley, I'm sorry to bother you, but could you help with some translation this afternoon?" "Fred, please just call me Sam." "Of course I can help. Is it another plumber from Guatemala?" I had become the go-to person in the building whenever someone had trouble with language. I could speak 7 languages very well and knew a bit of 4 others, focusing on the ones most often used in the Big Apple. This helped me support my neighbors, and I enjoyed it. It was a nice way to meet new people. "No, Mr. Watley, it's not a contractor this time. I set up a meeting to see the apartment next to yours with Jean Fournier, a real estate agent. Jean helps people from other countries, mostly French and German, find homes in the city. Unfortunately, he has a family emergency and can't come today. But his client doesn't want to change the meeting time. I have 3 more buyers planned to see the place this week, and they don't want to miss their chance." "Does this client speak French or German?" "She does. She speaks French. Jean mentioned that she can speak some English too, but since our language expert is close by, this could be your new neighbor, so if you think she seems a bit odd, just let me know and we can go greet her together." I chuckled. "Okay, Fred, just text me when she arrives and I'll meet you by the apartment." Well, Yvette was not what I expected. She was not a cat person at all, unless you compared her to the way Michelle Pfeiffer played a character. I struggled to talk to her that day. I kept stumbling over my words, which hadn't happened to me since college. Fortunately, her English was pretty good, so I didn't need to help her much. Instead of translating, I found myself following her around the apartment like a puppy in love. I was surprised she wasn't scared of the guy next door who seemed a bit odd. I must have made a good impression because when she left that day, she had decided to rent the place and agreed to go out with me. The spark I hadn't felt with other women was a bright flame with Yvette. We connected right from the start. She was clever, funny, and very beautiful. Honestly, I thought she was too amazing for me. But thankfully, she seemed to feel the same way about me. We shared so many interests that it was almost surprising. We were both former office workers who had done well for ourselves. I was focused on the stock market, while she was into the lottery, which she felt a bit shy about. I didn't think badly of her for it. I knew I hadn't earned my own money through just hard work either. I was just surprised that France had a lottery. Both of us had quit our jobs, mine in finance and hers in marketing, to follow our passions. I had turned my passion for languages into a job as an interpreter. Yvette was working hard to become a classical musician. She was also a really skilled martial artist. One day, when she learned that I often went to Sung's dojo, she decided to join me. She showed off her skills too. Just like me, she had trained in Krav Maga, and she also did savate, which is a kind of kickboxing from France. If I'm being honest, she was better than me, and my size was the only reason we were equal when we practiced together. When we shared close moments, It felt like it was just a shadow of the joy I had with Yvette. 6 months later, when her lease ended, she moved in with me. I was thinking about asking her to marry me. But there was one problem. Both of us were keeping secrets. For me, it was clear. The loop. The time loop was the most important event in my life. I realized I couldn't keep things from Yvette if I wanted to be with her for a long time. Not sharing my past made my story seem empty. I had many skills, but no real background to explain them. I had also made a lot of money in the stock market in a short time, and I couldn't easily explain how that happened. I had about 6 to 7 years missing from my life, as I had lost touch with my old friends and co-workers. All my friends now were new. I had a new home, money, friends, and a job. I was a man full of secrets, and Yvette noticed that I was keeping something hidden. At the same time, I sensed that Yvette had her own secrets too. I had spoken with her parents in Paris a few times over Skype, and there were awkward silences and things that felt unfinished. It reminded me a lot of how I interacted with my own parents. I wondered if she had faced something difficult in her past, like a bad relationship or something similar. I didn't ask too many questions, and Yvette didn't ask about the missing pieces of my life, but I felt we both really wanted to share more with each other. One night, as we got ready for bed, Yvette looked at me and said, "Sam, I love you. I think we both want the same things from this relationship." "Well, not exactly," I replied, lifting my hands to my chest and making a funny honking noise. Yvette laughed, but quickly returned to the conversation. "Come on, you silly. I'm being serious right now. I've never felt this way about anyone before, not even my ex-husband. But if we want our relationship to work, I can't keep anything from you." She didn't say, "We can't keep secrets," but it was clear what she meant. I agreed with her. "You're right." I took a deep breath. "I think we both have things to share. I've been putting this off for a while. My story may sound a bit wild. I have some people who can back me up, but ha! I bet after you hear what I'm about to say, you won't call me crazy so fast. My story is crazier than a squirrel." I couldn't help but laugh. It was always surprising to hear Yvette, with her fancy French accent, use funny Southern sayings. I think she searched for them online and dropped them into our chats just to tease me. Well, she certainly made the mood lighter. "I'll go first," she said, "before I lose my courage. Here, it might be better if you watch something first." Yvette had her laptop beside the bed. Once we both settled in, leaning against the headboard, she played a video that she had ready. What I saw was a collection of clips from security cameras. They showed a museum during a tense situation where people were being held against their will. Masked men stood with guns and machetes, watching over several people who sat in the museum's galleries. As I looked on, I remembered seeing this footage before. It was another attack by a group of extremists. This had happened around the same time I had my own scary encounter with terrorists. I recalled that some of the attackers had worn bomb vests. When the police came into the building, they saw that several local business people who were there for lunch had stopped most of the terrorists, including those with bombs. As I looked on, the woman who had done the most fighting began to take down the hostage takers. She was dressed smartly for work and was very impressive as she took out 5 terrorists. She took out the first 2 with a fast mix of kicks and punches. Then she used a gun she had taken from one of them to finish off the rest. The news had called her Fleur-de-Lis, like the hero from a DC comic book. It had been a few years since I last saw this video, but now I was really focused on it. The woman in the video was sitting right next to me. As the video stopped, a quiet moment passed as I tried to understand what I had just watched. This was a huge surprise. I wasn't sure if I still believed in luck like this. "Well, aren't you going to say something?" Yvette was holding my arm, and I could feel her grip getting tighter. My silence was bothering her. I was shocked, but she couldn't understand why. Maybe she had been hurt by men who acted overwhelmed or scared. I raised my hand to calm her down. "Just wait here for a minute, okay? I need to get something first. Then we can talk." I stood up and walked to the closet. I moved a board on the floor to open a small safe that Yvette didn't know about. Inside, I found some papers, a flash drive, and an iPad. I picked up the iPad and brought it to the bed. I plugged it in and turned it on. "Here," I said. "There's something you need to see." I sat next to her and played the last 10 minutes of the video made by the North Koreans. It showed my big moment at the end. My part was only a couple of minutes long, but the rest helped explain everything that had been happening. When the video finished, Yvette was holding my arm so tightly that I worried my hand might fall asleep. Sam, when did this happen? A few years ago. I didn't get the attention that you did. The attack made headlines, but it wasn't covered much, and nobody mentioned me at all. You should see that as a good thing. I was well known for a time, but then the threats started coming my way. With so many people from the Middle East coming to Europe and my name being out there, I was tired of feeling unsafe, so I changed my name and moved to this place. I pulled her into a warm hug. I received some good advice about staying hidden, and it's been nice to keep my identity a secret. I can't believe I didn't see it was you. Those two incidents happened not long ago. I remember being really interested in your story because it felt a lot like mine. Wow, you changed your hair. That red looked great on you. I'm sorry, dear, it was just too easy to spot. Maybe I'll let it grow back. You mentioned you saw my news reports, so did your attack happen before mine? Well, I'm not sure. Those weeks were really busy. I hardly had time to think about the holiday. Huh? What holiday? Yvette asked. National Tapioca Pudding Day, of course. Can you believe that someone would try to ruin such a special day? I laughed lightly. I turned to Julie to see if she found it funny, but her face had lost all its color. July 15th, she whispered. Are you saying your attack happened on July 15th? I didn't understand why she seemed so intense. Yes. How do you know that? I didn't think anyone really celebrated Tapioca Pudding Day in America, much less in France. I searched for it, Yvette replied. The Louvre attack. It took place on July 15th, 2016. We both looked very pale. It couldn't be possible, could it? The same day, Yvette looked at me. Sam, have you ever felt like you've experienced something before? But that's a different story. Hey, audience. If you like this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.